Okay. Okay, fantastic. Okay, you've also got your wonderful drum teacher, Steve Street, who's an old mate of mine, fantastic player and a fantastic teacher. And I know lots of you have really benefited from studying with Steve. So I'm really delighted he can join us. He's a fine player, and I know he's been covering a lot of really, really good things with you. Okay, so in the absence of anybody asking me any actual questions at this point, I know Anthony maybe suggested that you submit some. Steve asked me to possibly cover a variety of different topics, and we may be able to cover everything he said. But what we're going to do to begin with is just a little warm-up, if that's okay with you, and we can all join in with this. And it just involves playing single strokes, double strokes, and paradiddles. Really, really easy. At this particular point, no accents, just all even strokes. So what I'm going to do my end is I'm just going to play you what I want you to play, and then if we're all good with this, I may move on to a triplet version of it, and we'll see how we get on with that. Okay, so just bear with me a second. I'm just going to play it on the pad. Okay, so this is going to be dead slow. These are just quavers at this point, so straight eights. So it's just going to be 16 notes of each sticking. It's just this, just quavers. Doubles. Paradiddle. And back to singles. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and doubles. Then paradiddle. Try and keep them as even as you can. Feel free to join in. Doubles. And paradiddle. Singles. Doubles. Paradiddle. Okay, we all okay with that? Give me a thumbs up if you're all okay with that. Okay, now we're going to do something a little bit more difficult. We're going to try and play these in triplets. Okay, so this is a little bit more polyrhythmic. Okay, we're going to play just 1 bar of each. Actually, we'll play 2 bars of each, so we get a resolve. I'll play it for you first. Okay, so it's the same tempo. This is 107. Here we go. Doubles. Paradiddle. Singles. Doubles. Paradiddle. Singles. Doubles. Paradiddle. Singles. Doubles. Paradiddle. Okay, right, we're going to now move it up a little bit faster. We're going to play 16th notes at this tempo. Okay, just 1 bar of each. Same again. Singles, doubles, and then paradiddles. Back to singles again. Doubles. Paradiddle. Singles. Doubles. Paradiddles. Singles. Doubles. Paradiddles. Good. Okay. Now, when I'm playing those, what I'm trying to do is accept the rebound on each stroke that I play. Okay, so I'm not really using a series of downstrokes at this point because I'm trying to get an even sound. You play the stroke, and it's a technique called stop at the top. So you allow the stick to rebound, and the idea is you're coming back to the same position that you start at. Now, obviously, you can play this at a low dynamic and a very loud dynamic as well, but the whole idea is that you're accepting the rebound and allowing the stick to come back. So in other words, I'm not doing this, because I don't need those accents yet. That's for later on. So we're just trying to create an even sound. So what you ideally want is for the doubles and the paradiddles to sound as close to the single strokes as you possibly can, so they're all coming back to the same position. Okay, I'll just do it one more time. This is at 107. There it comes. Singles, doubles, paradiddles. Singles, doubles, paradiddles. Okay, great. Right. Now, one of the questions that Steve mentioned on his list was to talk about the molar technique. Now, have any of you got any idea, just through a show of hands, do you know anything at all about the molar method? Just put your hands up if you've sort of covered it, or whether, I don't know whether Steve's done anything with the molar thing with you. Okay, we got any positive? No, nothing about it. Who's heard about it? Anybody heard about the molar method? No? Okay, all right. You have, Ewan. Okay. I'm not going to base this whole lesson on the molar thing, but I'll give you a little bit of an idea about hopefully what it's about. Okay, so way back, there was an American drummer called Sanford Moeller, who he didn't invent this technique, but he certainly recognized it as a way of using a whipped accent technique. And it's utilized by rock drummers, jazz drummers, military drummers. It's a fantastic way of accenting with a single motion, a whipping motion. That's basically what it is. It's a whip motion. And some players have no idea that they're using it, but they do use it because it's the quickest way of playing continuous accents with one hand. It's also fantastic for playing a backbeat without pain. And yeah, it's a whipping stroke. I can already see that somebody's, yeah, there you go. Yeah, you playing that whipping stroke there. I was very fortunate to study with Sanford Moeller's best student, who was a guy called Jim Chapin, who he's no longer with us. But Jim was a fantastic drummer and educator, and he's also got the credentials of writing the first jazz independence book, which you may or may not know about, called Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer. It's an absolutely fantastic book. And Jim wrote that book, and it's been much copied in all kinds of styles, actually, but it's beautifully laid out. And he utilizes some of the Moeller method within that by playing a continuous accent pattern off one hand. It's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so just very briefly, Lynn, the idea behind the Moeller method is a whipped stroke. So if you were, for instance, going to play triplets with one hand, and you just use what we call the level system, this is me playing without Moeller, and then I'll add it, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I would generally teach my students to start high and then play the last two strokes at a lower volume like this. Okay, so if you can all just try doing that. So you're accenting, these are all triplets, just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just like that. Now it works very well using this level system, starting high and playing the last two low. Now, if I continue to use that method, this is about as fast as I can go using that technique. I have to make a change. Now, if you can see my hand, hopefully you can see the change I'm going to make. So this is the level system, and this is Moeller. So you see, what happens is there's a droop comes in the wrist, and rather than it being 3 separate motions, it becomes like one motion. So I'm just literally playing this. It's like tantamount to bouncing a ball, bouncing a basketball or a football. So you actually relax the wrist when it comes up, and there's this droop comes down, and it's like a release. So you're able to kind of get 3 strokes from one motion. You allow the other strokes to still rebound the way they normally would. Then you're adding this whip. This is to show you where the whip's happening. I've got the stick there straight. Right, okay, so now it's that whipping stroke there. Same with the left hand. I know I'm using orthodox grip here, but it's exactly the same thing. If you play match grip, still using that whipping stroke there. So here's the non-molar way of playing it. You can see my arm is quite stiff, and then you're allowing this natural whipping stroke to happen. So you're getting like 3 from 1, if you like. Now you can fill that in. All I'm doing there is filling in with the left hand even singles. Very effective way of playing accents. Very useful on the kit as well, because you're able to keep a constant motion going. Now what it in effect does is every time you play that whip, you throw in, sorry to get all biological about this, but you're throwing blood into the hand, which means you can keep the pattern going indefinitely. It has a particularly great use within playing ostinatos. So you're able to keep the triplet going on your left hand there. So you can see I'm keeping that constant whipping motion going with the left hand, or with the right hand if you want to play it that way. And then I'm able to play other patterns with it against the other hand. So it's this idea. Now, the other thing you can do is work on it with your accented single strokes. Okay, so there's a little exercise we can work on in this regard. Okay, so what I'd like you to all do now is to try and play accented triplets. So you're just going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so you're hitting a regular quarter note accent, trying to use that whipping motion if you can. That's it. Okay, so you're going to play a bar of triplets and then play a bar of triplets on one hand. Okay, so it'd be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then left hand lead, and then do the same off the left hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then left, 2, 3, 4. You know about this, Steve? That's it. So effectively, you're doing the same with one hand that you're doing with 2. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. A little faster. That makes sense. So now you can play this loud or very quiet. I don't know whether you can, hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just going to raise my stool a little bit. Get up a little bit higher there. Okay, so you can hopefully see my hands. Okay, so you can also play it like, literally like, just imagine you're flicking water off the fingers. You can play it very light. So it's just this little whipping motion. You throw the other hand in there, slowly. Or off the left hand, or hand to hand. So you're getting this whipping motion coming down here. Okay. Very, very useful. It's great in grooves. You can also play off 16th notes as well. So if you were to play singles, accenting off the right hand side, and then singles off the left there. So this time we're playing off 4 strokes. So it's 1 E under, 2 E under, and it's the same idea. Okay. That's it, just getting that little flick down there so you're playing that continuous 16th note. So what we're trying to develop here is this idea of this whipping stroke coming down in this sort of order. Okay, right. Now, one of the other things on the list was to talk about some maybe independence exercises that you can work on, but also incorporating them with rudiments. So by a show of hands, have any of you done any Latin playing up to now? Anybody done any Latin patterns or anything like that at all? Anybody? A little bit, a little tiny bit? Okay. I'm going to show you a simple independence exercise that could last you a lifetime. If you, a bit like brushing your teeth, this could last a lifetime if you work on it. So we're gonna take a very simple Latin bass line. There's 2 we could mainly work on. Either the surdo, which is Brazilian, which is from the samba, or there's a tombao bass line, which is from Cuba. Okay, but the Cuban one, you hear so much in funk, pop records use this all the time. So I'm going to show you what the pattern is. You probably know already, to be absolutely honest. But if we think of it in 16th notes, the bass line is just 1 E under, 2 and 3 under, 4 and. That's the bass line. I'm going to come over to the kit now, so hopefully you'll hear the. Does everybody hear my bass drum okay there? Okay. So this is it. This is the bass line. Just nice and simple. Are we all good with that? Okay, is that all right? So we're going to add to that the 2nd and 4th beats. You can play on 1 and 3, but I'm thinking in semi-quavers. So this is just. Feel free to play along. 1 E under 2 and 3 under 4 and 1 E under 2 and 3 under 4 and 1 E under 2 and 3 under 4 and 1. Is that okay? Everybody okay with that? Okay, so we're going to add to that initially just some single strokes on the snare. Okay, so it's just 1 E under 2 E under 3 E under 4 E under. How are we doing? Is everybody okay with that? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Right, now, there's a couple of ways we can go here. I'm going to get you to try and play something called a sun clave pattern off an accent pattern with your hands, okay? But we're going to try and play this against the tumbao bass line. So everybody knows the sun clave pattern. It's in a lot of New Orleans type records, but it's influential right across the board. And the basic pattern, I'm sure you'll recognize it, is just this: 1E under 2 and 3 and 4. 1E under 2 and 3 and 4. That's if we're counting it in semiquavers. It can also be counted in quavers. One and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And in sixteenths, 1E under 2, 3 and 4E under, 1E under 2 and 3 and 4E under. Okay, so what we're going to try and do is play that as an accent pattern on the snare drum in single strokes. So it becomes this. How are we doing? Are we all okay playing that? So when you play those accents, I'll just come round this side, try and work on 2 different levels. So you're coming up higher for the accents and keeping the unaccented notes low. It's all hand to hand. There's no tricky sticking at this point. It's just 1E under, 2E under, 3E under, 4E under, right, left, right, right, right. Simple as that. Is that making sense? Okay, all singles though. So 1E under, 2E under, 3E under, 4E under, 1E under, 2E under, 3E under, 4E under, 1. Okay, so now we're going to try and play that against that tumbao bass line. Now, the first bar, you probably already worked out that the accent pattern is exactly the same as the bass drum part, which is pretty convenient. The second bar, though, is a little bit more tricky. Okay, so it comes in between it. I'll just play the pattern. Okay, anybody think they can play that? Anybody? Yes, maybe, no? No? Is that a little bit? Okay, so the second bar of that is the most difficult part of it. It's just getting that crossover. So we've got the second bar, dead slow. But it can work really, really well. Slightly faster tempo as well. And what it does is it maintains the bass line, so the bass player is going to be happy because he's got something to lock down with. But you've got this other interest here. Okay, so I'm playing a slightly different pattern there going on the right hand, this is what's sort of coming next. But the basic idea is to get those singles working along with that tumbao bass line. Okay, so one of the other things that'd be great if you could work on would be the idea of playing different stickings over the top of these bass lines. Okay, so in the case of the tumbao bass line, we don't only want to play singles, we also want to be able to play doubles and also paradiddles as well. And I'll show you the reason and the usefulness of trying to play stickings over bass lines. Works great in pop and funk patterns, and also Latin, which you're definitely going to come to play. And they're really, really fun to get different rhythms going. Okay, so you need to be able to play double strokes against that bass line. Now, this is going to feel a bit weird to begin with. I'll play it for you, and but I'll do it really, really slow. Okay, so we'll do it against that tombale bass line. Okay, so that's with double strokes playing against that tombale bass line. I'm going to move this on now. I'm not suggesting that you've all got that down yet, but I'm going to show you where this is going. Okay, so we can also play these bass lines against paradiddles, okay? And you've got all kinds of rhythmic possibilities happening from this. If you're finding that the tombale bass line is too difficult to play to begin with, you can just play on beats 1 and 3 or keep a quarter note going. That's absolutely fine. I do appreciate that the pattern is a little bit more complex, but I know you guys will eventually get this together. Okay, so we play a paradiddle against this bass line, and then we think about splitting the hands up, and that's when the interesting patterns start to occur, when we start mixing the hands up. So don't worry if you can't all do this right now, but it's definitely something for you to think about working on. Okay, so here it is. It's the tombale bass line with a paradiddle on the snare, and then I'll move the right hand up to the ride cymbal. Okay, here it comes. Played an accented backbeat there on 2 and 4. Okay, so this is just literally playing a paradiddle. I was starting to move it around and orchestrate it around the drums a little bit there, but the minute you split the hands up, you've got 2 separate rhythms happening. Obviously with singles, that's it, okay? Okay, so there are 4 basic paradiddle permutations. You've got your single paradiddle, but there are 4 different ways of playing it depending on you moving the double around, which means you get 4 different patterns. Okay, so that's the regular single paradiddle. There's also a reversed paradiddle where you play the doubles at the beginning, and the sticking for that is right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left. All of these are in most rudiment books, or particularly in a book called Stick Control by George Lawrence Stone, which is an absolutely fantastic book, and I would really recommend you getting hold of it. Okay, so a reverse paradiddle then, if I play it off the ride cymbal and the snare, is just this. So what I'm doing there, I'm accenting on the backbeat on the first double. There are other accent patterns you can get out of it, but that's still a paradiddle, but just reversed. So here's a regular paradiddle. And the reverse. There are two more. There's also the inward paradiddle, which is where the doubles fall in the middle of each group of four. The sticking for this is right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left. It sounds like this when you split it up. There's one more, which is affectionately known as the other one, where the doubles are in the middle of the group of eight. It's right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right. And it sounds like this. So if I was to play a bar of each one of those against the tumbao bass line, I've immediately got four different Latin funk patterns to choose from. Okay, I'll just do it in succession, slowly at first. Okay, here it comes. So this is going to be one bar of each, counting in semiquavers, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and then I'll switch. Okay, so it's going to be the single, then the reverse, then the inward, and then the other one. Okay, here it comes. I'll do 2 bars of each actually. You can also play these dry over on the snare, on the hi-hat I should say. Okay, so really, really useful for you to start thinking about getting those patterns together. Okay, so the main application of that is to actually put them into genuine Latin beats. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 examples of that kind of thing now. Okay, so one is called a Mozambique, made famous by a guy called Steve Gadd, who's on a bunch of absolutely thousands of records, but he's really well known for playing Latin beats. And particularly on a track called Aja by Steely Dan. Okay, so this pattern involves the idea of playing those multiple stickings, and I'll just play the pattern for you. It just goes like this. You can also move that left hand round the kit. Okay, and just add 4 beats to the bar on the bass drum. So you can see, just by getting, if I wrote that out as a sticking pattern, you'd find there were reversed and inward paradiddles contained within that pattern. Now, this is so useful to learn in terms of your own sort of expression. You don't have to just, I played that off the rim there. You could play it over on the ride cymbal. You could play the right hand pattern on the snare and so on and so forth. But it comes out of learning this basic idea of playing the stickings and applying these rudiments in a musical way. Latin, absolute sort of Latin specialists wouldn't necessarily think of them as drum rudiments as authentic Latin patterns, but they are made up basically of these different patterns. Okay, there's what we're getting towards. I know we're getting towards the end of the session now, Ant, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, are there any questions you'd like to ask me about what we've just done before we resuming